really have a lot of good issues to discuss. I think Janine brought a very good end to wrap up everything together. Like at the end, if we think about the land use, like the example of the land use change and how a road can lead to these major changes on climate change through indirect and long-term impacts on climate change, on land use plan, then it will bring us to the role of SCA and to the role of good EIAs as well. And so I think the bank has a lot of emphasis also on helping the governments in developing their own policies, in developing their own SCA legislation. That's a role that we are doing more and more, trying to bring these questions of indirect and long-term impacts into the level of the policy concerns. I wanted to ask if there are questions and issues that you would like to discuss or pose questions to our panelists. Yes, just please say your name and maybe where you're from, and at the microphone if possible. There are so many interesting questions that I'm sure we're going to be short on time.
Thank you. Richenda Connell from Acclimatise. We're working with a number of large corporates at the moment who are typically maybe involved in long-lived asset development. Could be in a variety of different kinds of sectors. And at the moment, when these developers carry out these sorts of projects, they commonly expect to also provide some sort of social benefits in the form of improved infrastructure for the local communities and these kinds of things. And one of the issues that's come up recently when we've been working with them on looking at climate change and ESIA has been, okay, this is something we traditionally do at the moment in terms of ESIA. We look at how we help the local community in some way as when we put the development in. But if we are now looking at adaptation as part of ESIA, and we're thinking then about how we protect our own facility from the impacts of climate change, so we build a flood defence a bit higher around our own facility, and then just outside the wall, the local communities are being flooded more and more frequently. Do we have responsibilities to help build their adaptive capacity too? How far do we go in taking on that kind of responsibility, and where are the boundaries of where this might look for ESIA? I'm really keen to know from the point of view of you guys as very concerned with development outcomes, your views of where you think the private sector boundaries for this might lie. Thank you.
So anyone in particular that wants to respond? I see Alistair, you were? Oh, no, Vijay? Okay, Vijay, you hold your hand, yeah.
Thank you for the question. See, when we do any project, then impact of drainage is part of a regular EIA. Now, to my mind, raising the land a little higher, considering that the climate change would raise the level or increase the rainfall, would basically mean that one has to design the drainage in the system which can evacuate the added floods in an appropriate manner. And if it affects the neighboring community, then it has to be part of the study. It is, to my mind, considered in regular EIA too.
Are you satisfied with the? Okay, anyone else want to add something else?
I think it's a really good question, but I think it's sometimes difficult to distinguish, as your question suggests, Jen, where the direct interest of the company ends and the broader interest of the community, perceiving the company as having some social responsibility merely by its presence. And there are parallels, for example, in particularly extractive industries where, a part of the kind of a good neighbor situation is not to be too miserly in how a company approaches that. But like you, we've just started really thinking about, since our clients have just started to think about these questions, to get them to already start thinking that next broader step about not only their own direct interest, but how they might be working with the community is going to be probably a next step. But the area where, if I looked at the World Bank, there already is much larger public-private cooperation is in disaster relief. So if it's a client that already has a stake in disaster relief, then maybe you already have a toehold. But I'm impressed you're already having that issue brought to your attention, because I think it's ahead at least of the dialogues we've had.
Next question.
Hi. A request and a response to the question before. The request would be, if possible, could the last slide that Alan Miller had in his presentation be put up again? It made reference to 2 different publications, and it was just blinked on and off so quickly.
I think it'll also be at the website for the,
Okay.
I think all the presentations are going to go up, do you know?
Yeah.
Okay. They'll be at the website, but maybe we can put it back up.
Okay. And with response to the topic that she just brought up, one suggestion might be that if there was such compelling information for a project to take certain actions on a site, raising protection measures or whatever, if nothing else, then providing into the public domain that climate change information that was so compelling for that one project, putting that into the public domain so that other public and private sector people in the same geographic area had access to it, that alone would be a social benefit that could be picked up by a variety of people who could then use it in the ways that make the most sense for their particular circumstance.
Yes. Yeah, that's excellent. I can see that if this was a project in the IDB where we have both arms, private and the public sector, that would for sure be one area in which we would require the public sector to step in, and maybe through a public-private partnership address the issue. I know the IDB is very unique in this situation because we have both arms, public and private. But I'm sure the public-private partnership that Alan mentioned is probably one way that is going to be more prevalent in the future for the climate change adaptation.